Are the mullahs in Iran about to fall? This is happening as we speak, and we've got a special guest. This is Interference. This is the Alex and Justin show, otherwise known as Interference, because Alex is the star. Say hi, Alex.
Hi, Justin.
And we have a co-star today, and that co-star is Shahin Gobadi, who is member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the National Council of Resistance of Iran. Is that correct? Have I got it all right, Shahin?
Good morning to you, Justin and Alex, and to all your good viewers and listeners.
So, first question, is the Iranian regime about to fall? Is this it, Shahin?
Well, it's quite obvious a revolution has begun and there's no way back and no return for the regime. From all indication, this is by far the biggest challenge they have faced throughout the last 47 years. They are facing mega crisis from all directions. What you see today's eruption of a society which is fighting for its dignity. The Iranian people are trying to wrest their country from the clutches of the uh, theocracy that has deprived them from their most basic rights and have destituted them. So basically, there's no point of return for the mullahs. It's just a matter of time, which is not going to be very long.
And what's the latest? I've been hearing today about thousands of deaths. A few days ago, it was hundreds. Now it's thousands. What are the reports you're receiving?
Actually, according to the information provided by the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, which is the principal Iranian resistance movement, from 195 rather cities and towns throughout the country as of January 11, at least 3,000 protesters have been martyred in Iran by the regime, and that information has come from a wide range of sources, from the hospitals, from the relatives of those who have been killed by the coroner's office, and that's the Iranian resistance came up with that number. And as Madam Mariam Rajavi, the president-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, offering her profound and deep condolences, said the regime, particularly Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, should be held accountable for such a big crime against humanity.
Is Donald Trump going to get involved? Do you want him to get involved?
Well, I think, as we had said over the years, we think the ultimate solution in Iran is a regime change, but by the Iranian people, for the Iranian people. We think the correct policy, obviously, I've said it time and again, is neither appeasing the mullahs and cutting a deal with them, nor foreign military intervention. None of them are simply the solution. As it's quite evident these days, I think, as we speak today, which is the 14th of January, the Iranian people themselves are prepared to, as I said, stand up against the regime. And you have to keep in mind that there's a vast network of resistance units who have been basically playing a key role in guiding and in a lot of occasions and instances protecting the protests. So I think the right policy would constitute the following steps. First of all, so far as European countries are concerned and UK is concerned, proscribe the IRGC, the main entity that has kept the regime in power, the main entity for killing and execution and export of terror.
Explain that. Explain that acronym, please, Shahin. That's the guard, isn't it? What?
Yes, exactly. IRGC stands for Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. They are
Right.
basically the regime's main military apparatus for killing Iranians and also for exporting terrorism and also wreaking havoc throughout the region and, as I said, war in our region and also exporting terrorism throughout the world, literally. So they should be designated as a terrorist entity. This is way overdue. Number two, the regime leaders should be held accountable for all their crimes by international organizations which are, designed for this kind of a situation. But most importantly, the international community on both sides of the Atlantic, I would say, should recognize the right of the Iranian people and the organized resistance to stand up against the regime's crimes, to stand up against IRGC, and to bring about a regime change by the Iranian for the Iranian people, that would send a very, very clear message to the Iranians that the world is on their side, and also will send a very clear message to the regime and its retinue that the world has basically said goodbye to them.
Alex, now you've seen these reports. President Trump has talked about being locked and loaded, ready, help is on the way, etc. I mean, Shahin has just said that they prefer not to have foreign intervention. They prefer to do it themselves. What do you think? Should the US get involved?
I mean, first of all, Donald Trump had threatened to get involved militarily if protesters were being killed. Now, we know that's already happened. That red line has been crossed, and yet America's not yet done anything. My understanding is that if he were to do anything, it'd likely be sending in striker jets to target IRGC locations. There is going to be developments, I think, over the course of the next couple of days, because Donald Trump's been notified that there are likely to be public executions of activists now. And for him, I mean, he has said at a visit to a Ford plant in Dakota, when asked this question, he didn't know about the executions. Now he does know about them. He is likely to do something, and Iran is going to regret carrying those out if they take place. So I think we must be poised for an American intervention. I fully understand Shahin saying we don't want there to be foreigners coming in, removing the regime. You know, it's got to be done organically and holistically. Everyone saw the disaster when troops went into Afghanistan of what happened when that plug is then removed. And I think everybody is quite worried about what will happen if a destabilizing vacuum is left in Iran. But I do think that actually if America were to strike the IRGC in particular, to try and reduce their capability militarily, that could actually help. That would actually, it wouldn't be a direct target of Iranian people, the public. It wouldn't be necessarily a direct target of the Ayatollah, although I wouldn't put it past America to take out individuals. We already know that they took out the former head of the IRGC on Iraqi soil. I think it's about putting pressure on the regime to force them into a corner, to then that moment where, fingers crossed, we see members of the regime fleeing for sanctuary, say in Russia or something like that. The big question I have is if we get to that stage, and I think it is inevitable, like Shahin said, there is no going back now. It's very difficult for the regime to put the lid back on the pot. It's boiled over. But if we do see the mullahs, the Ayatollah fleeing for, say, Moscow, is Iran going to be able to unite around someone? Is it going to be able to welcome back the son of the former Shah and say, here you go, back from exile, please help us set up a democratic government here? Or is this going to lead sort of a balkanized Iran with different interests wanting different things?
Right, I'm going to ask Shahin that very question, but before I do, there's just to spend a moment, Alex, on the US and President Trump, because you mentioned Afghanistan. Obviously, Libya is the other example that comes to mind. They got rid of Gaddafi. Now look, we have civil war, and also Mr. Maduro in Venezuela has been removed. We don't know what's coming next. Is there a danger that by intervening, even in a limited fashion, that things could actually get worse? I mean, the results are not guaranteed, are they?
I think for many progressive Iranians, it's very hard to get worse than the current regime. But again, Syria is another example. We tend to, when we talk about countries anywhere in the world, whether it be Pakistan or a country in the Middle East or countries in Africa, we tend to talk about them as solid entities. We say Iran without actually paying attention to the fact that you have very different people living there with different belief systems, different political systems, different tribes, if you will. And so that is the fundamental question, isn't it? If you're going to take out, if it's a heavy-handed leader, if it is a tyrant, because they're oppressive, they sort of have this mechanism where they force people to not be able to react or do anything or push for their own particular interests. So when you do remove that, who gets prominence? Can these people coalesce around one individual or around one concept and then bring together something that could turn Iran into a fully functioning democracy? That is the big question. I don't have the answer to it. Perhaps Shahin might be able to guide us on that, whether people are going to unite around the concept of bringing back the Shah's son and setting up a progressive democracy, or whether or not there's still going to be pockets of support dotted around Iran who will end up fighting factionally against each other.
Right. Well, Shaheen, Alex mentioned the Shah's son there. Let's hear it from you because I know that your protesters from your organization were here in Brussels last Friday. We covered that
No
story.
Shah, no Mullah, freedom for Iran.
And one of the slogans, how does it go? No Mullah, no Shah, right? Explain, please.
Actually, this is the slogan that people are chanting in the streets of Iran. That's where the chant basically originated. Look, the Iranians have rejected both monarchy and theocracy, and that's why they are in the streets. The baby Shah, as it's called in Iran, has not even a seat on the bench. You only know of him because he's the son of a deposed dictator. uh, and he's living luxuriously with the money that his father basically embezzled, billions and billions of dollars, with no organization, with no structure, and basically trying to ride the wave. And you will find it also very interesting that in some occasions and some instances, the regime also had an interest to prop him up to divert the attention from the main slogan, which has been done with Khamenei. So basically, there's not going to be going back to either monarchy or current theocracy. People are looking for a true democratic republic. And obviously, every country is unique. Iran is very different. Iran is very different. There is a viable alternative in the National Council of Resistance of Iran, which is, by the way, a coalition of Iranian opposition movements, but they have a common point. They reject both any form of dictatorship, and that's what the Iranian people are vying for. And also, they believe in a secular democratic republic. And there is a plan for a 6 months transitional period to set the stage for a free and fair election to choose the next national and constituent assembly. That plan, which by the way has been supported by the majority members of the U.S. House of Representatives in a bipartisan way, the majority members of the UK House of Commons, House of Lords, a very large number of members of European Parliament, all in all 4,000 legislators over the years have endorsed that plan, calls for separation of government and religion, calls for total gender equality, calls for uh, total freedom, calls for autonomy for the Kurdish region, calls for a non-nuclear Iran, calls for abolishment of death penalty, and good mutual amicable relationship with the rest of the world, and that's known as Madame Rajavi, who is the president-elect of the NCRI for the transitional period plan. And as I said, it has tremendous international support and recognition. So basically, the narrative that Iran situation should be a vacillation between monarchy or theocracy is a very wrong narrative. Uh, Actually, Iran is ripe and ready for democracy. This is the only country in the Middle East that has gone through this process that, basically rejecting Islamic fundamentalists who are on their way out by the Iranian people's desire and their revolution as we witnessed unfolding before our eyes every day. So I think Iran is very unique to that effect. And yes, there's going to be democracy in Iran pretty soon. And then people will allow ballot box to be the ultimate arbiter and new era will begin. And you have to remember the Shah's era, which this fellow Reza Pahlavi claims to the throne, is synonymous with despotism, a notorious secret police called Savak, which killed and executed thousands upon thousands of political dissidents. And you will find it very interesting that Reza Pahlavi never disavowed that practice of his father, never disavowed the way Iran was ruled by his father and his grandfather by iron fist. So I think we are not talking about a battle on the airwaves. We are not talking about social media campaigns. We are talking about a real change on the ground, and we are talking about people's lives, blood and flesh. We just mentioned 3,000 people just lost their lives in the past couple of weeks. In the course of the last 47 years, in particular the last 45 years, more than 120,000 Iranians lost their lives for democracy and human rights. And if you do if one does math, then obviously you're talking about millions of people who are their siblings, who are their fathers, their mothers, their relatives, their neighbors. So that is the deep culture of resistance that you see is erupting today in Iran.
Okay, one more question on Rez Pahlavi. How much support does he have? He's getting a lot of media attention in the West, and I'm wondering if that's because we like this romantic notion of a king coming back. I mean, it is quite a sort of celebrity gossip type story, isn't it? How much support does he have?
Basically, I would say zero support inside the country. Look, what does he have to offer? I mean, as you said, a celebrity, luxurious life outside of Iran, no attachment to the Iranian people's, suffering in the last 45 years. And what does he have to offer? That he's just son of a king who was booted out of Iran by another, revolution, by the way, because of, he killed people, he tortured people, he embezzled people. Corruption was, quite systematic at a time. I lived in Iran at a time, and I remember those days. And this is in the historical memory of the uh, country, so one cannot, rewrite history. So, and all these years he lived in, in United States in a luxurious life with no suffering in the hands of the mullahs. Obviously, you said, a PR or a good social media campaign would not, bring about change in Iran. It takes much more serious challenger, which has an organization, which has endeavor, which has a clear platform, a clear program for transition. This fellow, has had gambit after gambit, and each of them just simply did not last for more than a few months, because the issue of challenging the ruthless bloodletting mullahs, which are the number one state sponsor in the world, is a very serious issue. It is not issue, as you said, fantasy or tabloid stories. It's a very, very serious issue that deals with people's lives and blood and flesh.
Okay. Now, give us 1 minute then, Shaheen, on your coalition. You said it's a coalition of different groups. Are they going to hold together? And explain who they are in a minute, if you can.
Sure, these are the people who believe on, as I said, rejection of any form of dictatorship. They're looking for a secular Iran. They're looking for a Iran which is, in a totally gender equality. And as I said, its main task, as it has been articulated, is to set the stage for a free, fair election so Iranian people can choose their own national constituent assembly to start writing a new constitution, and to make sure that ballot box literally would be the ultimate arbiter so people can vote. And one thing, we have made a commitment that this would be only a matter of 6 months maximum, just to, as I said, for a smooth operation and a smooth transition. So, as a matter of fact, this is the best guarantee that it would not be a chaos and it would not be a chaotic situation, because you have this viable alternative which has worked on its plan meticulously, and as I just mentioned, has dealt with all of the key issues facing a country like Iran. So, obviously, we have to go through a challenging period after the mullahs. They have devastated Iran. You have a country as resourceful as it is, with a population of 80% of them below the poverty line, with water crisis, with electricity crisis, with rampant corruption, with an inflation of more than 100% for some of the most basic commodities, with a currency which just was devalued 80% since last year this time. So obviously, uh, uh, the mullahs would hand over a country which has been simply wrecked. But Iranian people, by getting rid of the mullahs and going through the process, the experience of 1979 revolution, would be in a very unique position to very quickly herald to new era, as long as the foundations for democracy are set, which are, as I said, guaranteed in this uh,
Okay.
program.
Okay, Alex, let's end on a bit of geopolitics, shall we? Because things are changing in Venezuela. Who knows where that one is going to end up? And now Syria and Iran. Now, the common thread, Nespa, is Russian allies. Now, I wonder, is this a significant weakening of Russia's global power? What do you reckon?
This is more than just Russia. This is the anti-Western axis. It is basically what are called the Crinklies, which is China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. And indeed, their sort of satellite friends in the form of Venezuela, who of course produces 17% of the world's oil. So this is a dismantling of the anti-Western axis, if you will. And I think Donald Trump has a big agenda, and I think it is beginning to work and it is beginning to play out. But what's going to be critical, particularly for Iran, I might stress, is when, and I hope it's when, not an if, when the regime falls, when democracy is re-established, fingers crossed it will be a smooth transition, what is the relationship going to be like between Iran and its neighbours? Because historically you've had great competition between the Sunnis and the Shias in the Middle East, whether Iran will be able to get along with Iraq. Critically, what its relationship might be like with Israel in the context of the Abraham Accords. The geopolitical sands are shifting very quickly now in the Middle East, and particularly countries or states such as the UAE are looking at the future and saying, we don't want to go back to the old ways of theocracies, but we also don't want to go back to the old ways of belligerence in our neighbourhood and between neighbours. They see common sense, actually, in saying, okay, Israel's there, we're going to have to deal with them, we're going to have a relationship with them, we're going to have to trade with them. And frankly speaking, it was the Iranian regime who was the spoiler all the time in preventing that from happening. And there will be, I think, a great opportunity for Iran if the next leadership comes in and says, we want to be part of this progressive outlook where we will actually sign Abraham Accords. We will agree to get along, whether it be Saudi Arabia or Israel or the UK, the US, etc. If it is able to engage with the whole world, and particularly those people who are former adversaries in its own neighborhood, it could have an incredible future, which would dramatically change the entire course of geopolitics for everybody, because the main state sponsor of terrorism would have been eliminated. But that's where I wonder whether there are still going to be many pockets among Iranians themselves who would find the idea of recognizing Israel, trading with Israel, unconscionable. That to me is going to be the big question mark over whether or not this dismantling of the anti-Western axis will lead to a repurposing of all the different parts that can come together, coalesce around essentially a new world order.
Nice analysis, Alex. Like it. Listen, we've come up on 20 minutes now, and that's all the time we've got. Thank you, Shahin, for joining us. You joining us from Paris. We'd be happy to have you on again. Thanks, Alex. Alex is joining us as usual from the UK, and thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.